Okay, I guess it is set up. Um, okay, just want to check if you can see my screen.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you very much. So as I mentioned earlier that we'll try and finish a chapter a week. So we should be able to finish the Bhagavad Gita in 18 sessions, give or take. I think it's interactive, so give or take here and there, but that's the whole idea in about 18 weeks. Let's see if I can. Okay. So no surprises. We'll be studying Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And also we want to begin with acknowledging the mercy of Srila Prabhupada coming through the disciplic succession, that he has given us the Bhagavad Gita and allowed us this privilege of reading it and sharing it. So this is a little bit of an introduction into the course, that what will it offer you. So it should give us a systematic, comprehensive, and well-rounded understanding of the Gita. Now, of course, we have been studying the Gita for a long time, and our intention has always been to accomplish all these. What we are doing a little differently this time is that we are kind of setting the level of details to a sufficient level of abstraction. So generally when we read the Gita, we start verse by verse, which is definitely one way to read the Gita, which we have done for many years. And then each verse has so much of depth in it. Sometimes we would actually spend a full couple of hours just discussing one verse, and that is the beauty of Krishna's speech, that he can speak oceans in a drop. While that helps, that also kind of, it immediately gets us into a great level of scrutiny. So we kind of are not able to get the big picture. We kind of lost in the details. So by doing a chapter a week, we will kind of get this higher level of perspective, the flow of the Gita, the major points that it talks about. But also, since we are devoting one full class to a chapter, and we have the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, he has pointed out the nuances that we need to take care of, we need to be aware of. So it's also detailed enough to get a sense of the nuances. Practical application is that it should improve our life experiences if you're able to internalize it. So it's not just something of getting to know Gita, but essentially it is getting to know ourselves and also to share with others, whether in a mood of preaching or whether just in a mood of sharing. And finally, most importantly, as we know that the real shelter that the sadhus offer us is through their words. And when we are taking shelter of Bhagavad Gita as it is, we are also taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada. So I did not realize that because of this overlay of Zoom, And I'm not sure if it's happening to you also, but the lower right-hand corner in my screen is getting cut off. Can you see the lower right-hand corner of the screen?
I can see everything, nothing getting cut off.
Okay, so the lower right-hand corner it says it'll make you a 1%er.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
See
so
that.
on my screen it's cut off for some reason. So of course not a 1%er in terms of your tax returns, but Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada talks about in the introduction that many people claim to know it and few people actually know it. And the idea is that by this systematic study, we will, by the mercy of Prabhupada, be one of those who have, by his mercy, able to get a sense of Bhagavad Gita as it is, and not as we want it, and not as it isn't, but as it is means that as Krishna spoke it. So in everything, there is some effort from my side, there's some effort from your side. But I also wanted to put on the table what would be good for you to commit from your end to get the most of it. First is faith. Prabhupada talks about this right as the very first introduction to the introduction, that we won't be able to get anything out of the Gita unless we have some level of faith in the speaker of the Gita, in the words of the Gita. So we have some faith in Krishna, some faith in Prabhupada, some faith in me. So it doesn't have to be the unshakable faith that comes after a lot of endeavor. But Prabhupada says a komal shraddha, soft faith. That so he says that at least for the sake of the discussion, assume that that Krishna is God, Bhagavad Gita is his word, and the presentation is Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because if you don't, then you will look at everything from a speculative perspective or from a challenging perspective. So we'll worry so much about negating what we hear that we won't get the message. Second is attentiveness. So I know we have been doing a lot of Zoom meetings, and sometimes we have this tendency to put the meetings on video silence and then multitask. So sometimes we'll try and finish our rounds, or sometimes we'll try and finish our chores, and let the course run in the background. We'll get something, but not what the intention is. So my request is to give it the 1.5 hour of attention. That would be beneficial. And 15 minutes of every day of your time. So the way the course is designed is that there is some work to be done. Not much, 15 minutes is minimal. In most cases, it probably will be less than 15 minutes. But at the most 15 minutes of your time, if you can keep aside. So I would be sending you these presentations over, and the work that needs to be done will be there in the presentation. So if you can just discipline yourself to set aside 15 minutes to do the work that is needed, that would benefit. Otherwise, again, if you're just a spectator, we will get something, but not to the full extent. So let's get started into a little bit of a background that what does the Gita talk about. Now I do realize that we have a bit of a mixed group over here. There are some people who are probably at a more introductory level, and there are some people who are at an intermediate level, some people at a more advanced level. So, and it is okay. It increases the fullness of the class. But what I would ask is to allow for everybody to participate, so that people who are searching for answers, they get an opportunity to share. People who know the answers, if they can stay back and allow others to participate. So what does the Gita talk about? So people say so many things about what the Gita talks about. Don't back off from a fight. So believe it or not, this is what was the description of the Bhagavad Gita in the Supreme Court of Russia. That's what they described the Bhagavad Gita as, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. So there was a court case against ISKCON. It was a little bit of the other way around. There was ISKCON that had filed a court case because in Russia they had declared that it's not a bona fide. It does not it's not a bona fide religion. And the basis is Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavad Gita says fight, or don't back off from a fight. Now, fortunately, the case was eventually won. When the judge was told about the nuances of the Bhagavad Gita, then apparently she was extremely impressed by it. But yes, this is what some people say. Gita says, don't back off from a fight. Just do your karma. Very, very common in India. What is Bhagavad Gita? Do your karma. Do your duty. Somebody who has a little bit of more understanding. So karma generally translates to whatever you're doing. Whether you're working, or you're a householder, or whether you're a thief, whatever you're doing, just do your karma. Do your duty is a little bit more refined, that you understand what you're supposed to do, and then do your duty. Help others. A big portion of people, especially in India, they established the whole notion of altruism and philanthropy on Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, help others. Don't worry about the results. Again, a lot of people say that you just do what you have to do and don't worry about the results. Do not consider yourself as the doer. Some people say about Bhagavad Gita says that you are God. And as devotees, we may find it surprising, but what is actually more surprising is that there are more people who consider that Bhagavad Gita tells us that we are God than those who do not have that notion. So that is surprising, but that is factual. That there are more versions of Bhagavad Gita, more interpretations of Bhagavad Gita, more people who read the Bhagavad Gita with this understanding. That ultimately what the Bhagavad Gita says is your God. That at the end, Krishna tells Arjuna that I have given you this instruction, now you do what you feel is best. So people take that statement and say that Krishna presented himself as God, but then ultimately he said that you are God, because whatever you want to do, that is the ultimate reality. God has a duty to us. Many people say that Krishna says that I come to re-establish religion, to protect the miscreants, to protect the innocents and annihilate the miscreants. The sense of Bhagavad Gita is that God has a duty to us, and he should do his duty. I was recently having this discussion with somebody based on this COVID crisis. Person was saying that what's all this Bhagavad Gita saying that God protects us from difficult times? Where is God right now? What is the value of Bhagavad Gita when God says that He's there to protect us and now He's not protecting us? So many people actually consider this is what the Bhagavad Gita is. And some of the more intellectually speculative, they say that Bhagavad Gita is a metaphor of a life. That the horses are the senses, and Arjuna is the living entity, and Krishna is the mind, and the reins are something. So they basically establish the whole thing as a metaphor that they're supposed to decode. So the reality is that the Bhagavad Gita is all that, because all that is based on the Bhagavad Gita. Now, there are people who say things that are completely not based on the Bhagavad Gita. They don't count. But all that I said, people can actually go back to the Bhagavad Gita and pull up verses to substantiate their perspective. So the Bhagavad Gita is all that, but it is much more. So the picture I have is of different blind people who went to see an elephant, and they touched different parts of the elephant, and somebody said it's like a snake, and somebody said it's like a rope, and somebody said that it's like a wall, and the elephant is all of that and none of that. So somebody who has the ability to see can only describe, and that's why we take shelter of our preceding acharyas. They have the Shastra Chakshu. They have the ability to see, and they describe. And through their eyes, we are able to see what it is meant to be. So, what is the Bhagavad Gita? And this is more of just a positioning of the Bhagavad Gita. That where is it? Where is it positioned? It's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna just before the war is about to commence. The conversation is held on the battlefield between two opposing armies poised for war and lasted for around 45 minutes. So we know that on the day first of the battle, before the battle was about to begin, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken. And at one point, there are 18 Akshwinis of soldiers between the two sides. Between them is Krishna and Arjuna, and they're waiting to start the war. And that's when the Bhagavad Gita is spoken. So according to the Acharyas, the whole purpose of the Mahabharata is for the Bhagavad Gita to be spoken. Because Mahabharata is full of all kinds of things that can attract the mind of those who are more materially invested. So it has the elements of intrigue and passion and deceit and royal subterfuge and chivalry, great heroes, great villains. So it's a blockbuster. It's not surprising that when the Mahabharata came as on the television, then it had such fantastic ratings, because it is something that completely draws the mind in. And at the time when everybody is waiting with bated breath, that two of the most powerful dynasties, actually the same dynasties but split, two of the most powerful dynasties are facing one another, and at stake is the supremacy of the entire planet. And on the battlefield are some of the most fearsome warriors who are respected in all the three worlds. Some of them had even conquered and fought and defeated the demigods. So such great warriors are standing there eager to fight. So at that time, Krishna speaks the Gita. So it could not have been a more opportune time. And it also goes as a testimony to the importance of the Gita. That this is the time when everybody's attention is funneled into this point. It said that Mahabharata was ready to be fought. All the demigods had congregated. All the Siddha Purushas, through their mystic abilities, were witnessing the battle. And the Bhagavad Gita was spoken there for everyone. In the Mahabharata, it appears in the Bhishma Parva. And even now, 5,000 years later on, it is one of the most published, read, and quoted religious books in the entire world. Just in terms of recognition, there is hardly a person who would not recognize the word Bhagavad Gita. And there are so many people. When just before the nuclear test was done, the Bhagavad Gita was quoted. The 11th chapter was quoted, where Krishna says that Kalo Asmi, death I am, by the father of the German guy, the father of the atomic bomb. And if you look at the behind the Gita, then there are so many great personalities: Einstein, Ralph Emerson. So all of them have found something of sustenance and value. So, want to talk a little bit about the myths versus the facts of the Bhagavad Gita. What the Bhagavad Gita is about and what it's not about. So it's a book of spirituality and not of religion. So what's the difference? The difference is that spirituality is non-sectarian. Spirituality is at the level of the spirit soul. Religion is how you practice that spirituality. So the example that is given is that there may be an injunction to be healthy. That's universal. Whether it is in English or Hindi or Sanskrit or Russian, or whether it is amongst men or women, or between people who are doctors or who are engineers, that is universal. Be healthy. Now, how you be healthy, that has a lot of practical connotations. For some people, healthy means eating right. For some people, healthy is exercise. For some people, healthy is yoga. For some people, healthy is music. So religion is the way that spirituality is actually implemented. And that is why Bhagavad Gita does not concern itself with religion. You will not see the word Hindu in the Gita, because it is not really concerning itself with the Hindu religion. Its reach is truly universal. Bhagavad Gita is a book of philosophy. You will not find a lot of because of the nature of the information that is given, it is philosophical, and it is meant to change the way that you think. It's meant to influence you at an intellectual level. But it is not meant for speculation. Because the book is so philosophical, people who tend to take to it are people who are more intellectual, and unfortunately these are the kind of people who are also given to speculation. When Krishna says this, then he means this, and actually in the current time it should mean this, so I believe what Krishna is saying is this. So it's not a book of speculation, but yes, it is a book of philosophy. It's a book of faith. So there's a difference between faith and superstition. Superstition is when you accept something based on some emotional component that is attached to it, whether it is fear, whether it is deference to your to the traditions in your family, that you have heard from your parents that if you do a certain thing, it is good or it is not good, and then you simply follow it. Faith is different from superstition, because even though faith requires submission, but it is based on something that is verifiable. So when Krishna gives an instruction in the Bhagavad Gita, we accept it on faith. But the reason it's not superstition is because when we do what Krishna asks us to do, we get the result that he promises us. So faith is what we have in our doctors. So we go to a doctor, we have faith that there is a degree in his wall that says that he has come from a medical institution. He's certified by authorities. And so the medicine that he will give to us will cure us. Now, we don't know what we are suffering from. All that we know is that we are suffering. We have no idea what that medicine is. All we have is faith that the doctor is able to diagnose a disease and prescribe the right medicine. But then what we do is that we take the medicine according to the prescription. He says, take one in the morning on an empty stomach, take another in the evening after dinner. Don't eat this kind of food. Don't do these kind of things. So we do that and we don't do what he says not to do, and then we feel better. And that is when the faith gets validated and actionable. Even though we have said that Bhagavad Gita is philosophy, but it is not armchair philosophy. It is not just two people sitting and trying to intellectually decipher the mysteries of life, and then after that ending the conversation on a cup of coffee. It is actionable. So everything that Krishna tells us is something that can translate into actions of either our body or mind or our words. And only when we bring this philosophy down to action, that we see the influence of Bhagavad Gita in a tangible way in our life. So what does Bhagavad Gita speak about? So it speaks about dharma. Now, in these slides, if you notice in some of these slides, in the upper right-hand corner, I have a small yellow sticky there, which says remember. So this is what I was mentioning in terms of the 15 minutes per day that you need to spend, is that these are the concepts that you need to commit to memory. Now, everything is of course relevant, and it's establishing cadence, but these are points that are distilled that go to the core of the definition. So the one thing that the Bhagavad Gita talks about is, the one and only thing that the Bhagavad Gita talks about is dharma. This is a point that we need to remember. Now, what is dharma? So dharma is defined as the intrinsic quality of one's existence. So the example that is given is that the dharma of water is liquidity. If water does not have liquidity, then it cannot be considered as water. It may be steam, or it may be ice, or it may be something else. But water as we know it is inseparable from this quality of liquidity. So the very essence of the being of water is liquidity. Similarly, the dharma of fire is heat and light. That's the nature of fire. Where when there is heat and light, then we can understand that there is fire present there. Or speaking other way, that if there is a fire without heat and light, it is not fire. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita talks about the dharma of human beings. It's talking about the dharma of souls, but because only in the human form of life, one has the intelligence to read it and understand it, it is considered to be talking about the dharma of the human beings. What is the essence? What makes a human a human? What is the most defining quality of being a human being? That is what is the subject of Bhagavad Gita. There are other subjects that support it, but this is the overarching, unifying, essential subject of Bhagavad Gita, that it talks about the dharma of humans. So I'm going to stop over here and see that if we have any comments or discussions.
So, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Now that you explained dharma, I see that it doesn't have a religious connotation. But if you talk to somebody that is kind of outside I guess, the Indian culture or the Hindu culture, they would associate dharma with Hinduism, right? But that is, based on what you said, that's a misnomer.
That is true, Prabhu. That's why Prabhupada goes out of his way to clarify what dharma is and what dharma is not. So dharma is not Hindu, it's not religious. It is just the essential property of who you are. Important for us to understand this right away, because later on we will see that Bhagavad Gita essentially will expand on this subject. So since we are coming more from taking a top-down approach, the understanding is to first get a sense of what is the unifying topic of Bhagavad Gita. And this is it, that it helps us to establish our dharma.
Thank you.
So this one also has a remember sticky on it. So essentially these 2 points, Bhagavad Gita talks about dharma, and dharma is the intrinsic quality of the living entity. So that gives us our first definition of what the Bhagavad Gita talks about. Any other comments?
So it's a very nice presentation, very clear. What is difficult is that when you said that it has to be practiced, I know I'm sure you will get into that. But not a shortcut to practice, but what is that hinders us from practicing, and why only 1%? I'm assuming that when you said 1%, when you practice, you belong to that 1% elite class, or a class which actually practice?
No. This was me just trying to upsell my course, saying
Okay.
that After you do the course, you will become a 1%.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Now I'm looking forward to it. It is very nicely, very, simplicity. I believe in simplicity. It's very well explained. So what is, how does one, not shortcut, so that's not the right word. What does one do to practice it? Because that's the most powerful part. I'm sure all of us, at least some of us, are educated and well, can remember this, understand this, the way Prabhupada explains. I'm sure that's why it's called as it is, and not distortion, but just the pure form. But still, what is stopping? Why am I not able to practice it? And if as a second part is that if the intrinsic dharma is all about intrinsic part of the human being, is that not a little bit of a dichotomy, because the human being is susceptible to all kinds of limitations or fallacy or attraction, whether it is greed, anger, all those so-called negative emotions that exist. That's inbuilt in us, right? It's not developed. Maybe it is conditioned to some extent, but still it is very natural, right? So if our dharma is all intrinsic, then, and you have to practice dharma, then if my intrinsic nature is to laugh, if I'm laughing, but beyond a point, if you laugh, then somebody says, "Hey, you're a mad guy. Why are you laughing so much? There's no joke." But somebody says, "Hey, I'm laughing because only human being can laugh loud, right?" So is that all the intrinsic quality of a human being? It's to be practiced, or it is to be understood, or just? I'm a little confused now because dharma is, if it is all intrinsic, because there are all kinds of things.
Prabhu, thank you, Prabhu. I think I understand what you're saying. The last statement that you made is actually a better answer to your question than I could have given. So thank you for giving it. So you said that, is there something that should be understood and should be practiced? So your first question was that why don't we do it?
Yeah.
And because we lack conviction. So once we understand that it needs to be done, then it will be natural for us to do it. If you look at all the things that we have done in our life and that we continue to do, is because it comes from some sense of conviction.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita, that it attacks at a root level. So I can come to you and say, "Prabhu, you need to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z things." And maybe because you think favorably of me, you may do it for some time. But just because I'm saying, but if I convince you that this is the best thing for you to do, then you will be the one who will be motivating yourself to do. So, so the Bhagavad Gita is designed to develop that conviction in us. And if our intrinsic nature or dharma is of a certain kind, and then we are not living according to that, then how is it our intrinsic dharma? I think that was a question, that if my intrinsic nature is something and I'm not living according to that. So the answer to that question is experiential, that if my intrinsic nature is to laugh, but I'm in a situation where I'm not laughing because of external impositions, will I be happy? I won't, because I'm doing something that is different from my intrinsic nature. Because somebody else has come to me and convinced me that, "Are you mad? Why are you laughing? There's no need to laugh." And for whatever reasons, I've accepted that person's explanation and said, "Okay, from now onwards, I'm not going to laugh." But then I'm acting contrary to my intrinsic nature.
Yeah.
So once we develop that conviction, that yes, this is our intrinsic nature, both the problems get solved. We develop conviction, and then based on that conviction, we also begin to practice. We know that this is the right thing to do, regardless of what the other person will say. And these topics will unfold in a very, very natural way as we progress through the book.
Mm-hmm. Just a comment there. Good. I think I'm getting a little bit of understanding. If I just want to draw some analogy to a child, as a baby, right? The baby doesn't have much of knowledge or any conditioning, nothing, right? No, he doesn't know what is Bhagavad Gita. He doesn't know anything, but still, when he's hungry, he's eating. When he wants to sleep, he's sleeping for 10 hours, 20 hours, doesn't matter. And he's just living at an intrinsic way. When he wants to laugh, he's laughing. When he without a reason, he laughs. Without a reason, he cries. So he just kind of lives a life, a child. And there is no jealousy in him. There is no hatred in him. There is no anger in him. He's not carrying a negative emotion beyond a point. What happened yesterday? He's not or what happened 5 minutes back is forgotten. So is he practicing, or he's just living in an intrinsic that dharma way? That's one. Second is, if it is such a beautiful discourse, I mean, obviously it's a magnificent discourse. Does one have to be like Arjuna to understand that level of, because see, it's Krishna, you said it's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna before the fight. I mean, one has to get to that level of both, I call it intellectually and in every aspect of a human being, because he's having a conversation with Lord Krishna, right? At the end of the day, Krishna has to come down to tell Arjuna, who's also a great warrior to education, all kinds of things he has gone through in life, to even argue it out. Or it took that kind of time, 45 minutes. Oh my God, that's like, probably I'll take 45 lives to understand one chapter of Gita. I didn't know that it's a 45 minutes discourse.
It is said to be 45. So again, two very good questions, Prabhu. So we're talking about a child, right? So a child is definitely closer to the dharma than we are, because of the attributes that you pointed out, right? They lack envy, they lack prejudice, they're innocent. But even a child is born with conditioning. That's the reason they're born. Why does the soul take a body? Because of conditioning.
Okay.
So yes, there is conditioning there, but to a lesser extent. And as we grow, we acquire more and more layers of conditioning. We can always look at the child and get a sense that, are we going down the right path? Because they're more advanced than us in terms of being closer to their intrinsic qualities. But it is not the end. It's just a trend. Because even the child, a soul has to be conditioned to take a body. So even the child has that conditioning. I think the second point that you made was, do we have to be at the level of Arjuna? So no, because Arjuna did us a favor. He came down to our level. Right, because there was no reason for Arjuna to have this conversation with Krishna. He's an eternal associate of Krishna, and he's full of knowledge, fully liberated.
Yeah.
Right. But he came down to our level as a favor to us. And he asked the questions that we would have asked. And as you were saying, Krishna came down to Arjuna's level, which means Krishna came down to our level. And that's why the Gita is available. If it was an esoteric, exclusive conversation, and there are, so if you read the Bhagavatam, there are references to conversation that are not revealed. And the reason they're not revealed is that they're difficult for us to comprehend. So the conversation is mentioned, but the content is not revealed. But this, the content is openly and publicly revealed there. So for that very reason, that Arjun wanted us to benefit, ultimately Krishna wanted us to benefit. So Arjun came down to our level, Krishna came down to Arjun's level, and the conversation happened, which is why we have hope, which is why you and I are sitting over here trying to understand this conversation without any pretentiousness. We are not pretending to be at the level of an exalted person like Arjun. We're not pretending to second guess Krishna, but we are basically understanding that this is a representation of their mercy on us. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Sunil. So I had a question on what is the relationship between dharma and the duty? Is the dharma, it seems to me, based on the slide, it seems to be a more like a permanent nature of a human being. And the duty is like what should be our response to a given situation. If somebody acts and that harms me, or it affects me in some way, and I have to respond in a certain and people, I have always seen many people mixing the two things, saying that our dharma should be like this in this situation, our dharma says this. So are they really different, or are they being confused? Could you elaborate on that?
Thank you, Prabhu. Very good question. Something I was planning to speak later on, but I'm glad you brought it up now. So yes, there is based on our dharma. So based on our intrinsic quality, there is an intrinsic duty or responsibility that is attributed, and that is what is considered to be a part of dharma, that your dharma is this. Now, the same term is also used for our conditional responsibilities. So before you were married, you had a certain set of duties. As a student, as a son. When you were married, you had another set of duty. When you become old and your children become adults, you have a different set of duties. So that dharma is constantly changing. Right? Now, it is still considered dharma because of the general connotation that this is what you're supposed to do, but it is predicated on your specific situation. Even in one situation, as a father, you have a different dharma. As an employee in your organization, you have a different dharma. As your position in the organization changes, your dharma changes. So that is called swadharma. The swadharma is that which is conditional. What Bhagavad Gita talks about is paradharma. Paradharma is that which is absolute. Whether you are single or married or old, whether you're a man or woman, whether you're a CEO or whether you are a demigod or whatever you are, that dharma does not change. It is absolute and it is intrinsic. So because dharma got inherited and contaminated in describing conditional duties, so which is why this distinction is made between paradharma and swadharma. But in its essence, dharma is your essential and intrinsic qualities, which is what the Bhagavad Gita speaks about. Now, again, because the Bhagavad Gita speaks to about many aspects, it will also speak about swadharma, but mostly to distinguish it from paradharma. So there are parts of Bhagavad Gita that will say that if you're a Brahman, then this is what your duty is. If you're a Kshatriya, this is what your duty is. But it says that not because it wants to talk about Swadharma, but it wants to make a distinction that all this is based on your birth, on your time, place, and circumstance. It's changeable. But what is unchangeable and intransient is your paradharma, which is the intrinsic quality of your existence.
Like you gave that remember like that, right? Is there any homework also is involved for us, Prabhuji? Because as you explained, it appears that I understood the class, but when other devotees asked the questions, like I was kind of that, like it was so helpful, their questions. So
Yes, Prabhu, absolutely. That's why I asked for 15 minutes of your daily time to do the homework. So part of the homework is that the slides that are tagged with the remembered note, you should remember them. And then there's some additional work given towards the end.
Yeah, I have one question. So, I mean, Bhagavad Gita, I mean, it's just, I mean, also talks about mostly about the soul, that, we're not the body, we are the soul. So in this terms of dharma, where we talk about intrinsic quality of one's existence, are we referring to that as a quality of a soul, or is that for the material body are we referring to?
Quality of the soul.
Okay.
So that's why it makes that premise right up front. So what is the duty of the body is the swadharma. So you have the body of a man. So there is some dharma attached to that body. But the soul that is independent of the body that you have, that is what the Bhagavad Gita talks about, which is the paradharma.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you. So let me proceed. So Bhagavad Gita, within the realm of dharma, it essentially tells us a story. It tells us a story about people working as per the propensity over time, searching for God. This is the story, even though it's a book of philosophy, and I'm taking a little bit of liberty over here, but if you distill the philosophical points that are being made, this is the storyline of Bhagavad Gita. It talks about people who are working as per their propensity over time, searching for God. This translates into the 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita. That the Bhagavad Gita talks about people, jiva, the living entity, the soul. Talks about people working, karma, according to their nature, prakriti, over time, kal, looking for God, Krishna. So this is the so if we were to do a topical analysis of the Bhagavad Gita, then it covers these 5 topics. So this is one way for us to remember also these 5 topics. The Bhagavad Gita is a story of people working according to the nature over time, looking for Krishna. So Bhagavad Gita is talking about these 5 topics: jiva, karma, prakriti, kal, and Krishna. So Bhagavad Gita speaks about dharma. In the overarching context of dharma, it brings forth these 5 topics. And it does so in order to help us distinguish that what is our dharma and what is not our dharma, and how to identify our dharma. So the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita we need to remember. Bhagavad Gita speaks about dharma, and within dharma it speaks about these 5 topics. So, and this is just a summarization about it. The Bhagavad Gita speaks about dharma for humans, that dharma is the intrinsic quality of one's existence, and it is explained through these 5 topics of jiva, karma, prakriti, kal, and Krishna. Okay. Now understanding a little bit about the structure of the Bhagavad Gita. And the reason I've asked you to remember this is if we are to find our way around the Bhagavad Gita, we need to know how it is structured. So when we go to a new building or when we go to a new office, and the first thing we see is where is the elevator, where are the stairs, where's this room, where's the exit to the room. So we need to know our way around it, the layout of the building. So this is important for us to know the layout of the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita is divided into 18 chapters, and it has 700 verses. It's divided into 3 sections. The first 6 chapters talk about karma. The second set of 6 chapters talk about bhakti. And the last set of 6 chapters talk about Gyan. So Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, 700 verses. First 6 chapters, predominantly karma. So we'll see later on that there are other things that are spoken, but they're all spoken in the context of karma, activities. The second set of 6 chapters from 7 to 11 predominantly talk about bhakti.
Sir, there is 6 plus 5 here.
Yeah,
7.
that's what I was saying. The second, I made a mistake. It's 7 to 12.
Okay. That's how 3 set blocks of 6 chapters.
Yeah. Let me get back to somehow I don't think you can see the screen now, can you?
No.
Something I did, but let me take this opportunity to correct this also. Okay, can you see the screen now? So yeah, so chapter 1 to 6 is about karma. 7 to 12, second set of 6 chapters, is about bhakti, and 13 to 18 is Gyan. So 18 chapters, 700 verses, and these 3 divisions, karma, bhakti, and Gyan, 6 chapters each. That's the structure of the Bhagavad Gita.
Sorry, got a little confused. So then what about those 5 topics that you just talked about, people to Krishna?
That's what I said. They're topical. So topical in the sense that the topics are distributed over the entire 18 chapters.
Okay.
And this is the chronological, or it's not a chronological. Chronological means as per time. This is sequential. That the first 6 chapter 1 to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are karma. Within karma, you will find all the 5 topics being introduced and developed subsequently.
Okay.
So now we are talking about karma. or we'll begin with, for obvious reasons. It's the first set of 6 chapters. So this is what I would also like you to memorize, is the title of the 6 chapters. And you may feel that it is not needed right now, but if you can just trust me on this, that it is one of the most potent ways to familiarize yourself with the book. Sometimes we jump straight into chapter 1, verse 1, memorize the verse, go ahead. All that is relevant. But important for us.
अच्छा you want to क्या chanting करना है हैं लड़की को लग रहा होगा कोई छोटा बच्चा लेके आ रहे हैं भरत से
Dinesh Prabhu, you may need to mute.
Dinesh Prabhu, can you mute? Thank you. So if you can memorize the title of the 6 chapters. Chapter 1, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. Chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Chapter 4, transcendental knowledge. Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. And chapter 6, Dhyan Yoga. So later on, once you have memorized the English titles, so later on in the course, I'll ask you to memorize the Sanskrit names for this and the number of verses in this. And again, it may seem that we are doing statistical study, maybe we are, but very, very helpful in us in understanding our way around the Bhagavad Gita. The 2nd chapter, contents of Gita, summarized, 72 verses, the 2nd largest chapter in the Gita. So we kind of have a lay of the land, that how is the Bhagavad Gita laid out. So please use one of the 15 minutes to memorize, for now, just the English title of these 6 chapters.
Prabhu, may I ask a question?
Sure, Pyali.
So in this list of chapters, I always have this confusion because I know that you had mentioned that the first 6 chapters focuses on Karma Yoga. But, chapter number 4 says transcendental knowledge. So that gets a little confusing to me at this point. I'm not challenging that we shouldn't memorize it or anything, but it's just confusing, so I just wanted to understand
So
it a little differently.
It's a good point, Pyali. So the point I said is that they predominantly talk about these topics, and the talk is sometimes in terms of what it is and what it isn't also. So chapter 4, which is transcendental knowledge, is actually not so much in the realm of, it's not so much in the realm of Gyan, but in the realm of the knowledge that is needed to do the activities that you will do. So when you go to chapter 4, you will see that Krishna gives that knowledge by which what should be your frame of mind when you're executing your activities. So the overarching context is karma, but you're right. It is approached through different levels of specificity. Like the last chapter, the 6th chapter, it really has very little to do with karma as we know, because this is about Astanga Yoga. the sixth chapter, it is still put in over there because it ingests the output of karma. That once you get sufficiently purified by karma, this is what you are ready to do. So that way it is relevant. But you'll have to take this with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because not every verse and not even every chapter, later on also when we talk about bhakti and gyan, will completely align itself with this classification. The classification is more that it is overwhelmingly talking about this topic. Okay, so let's start with the first chapter, because we had said that we will do one chapter a week. Now we did spend some time in the introduction, and fortunately the first chapter is a relatively small chapter, so we should be able to do it. So chapter 1, title, Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. The main point in the chapter is Arjun's doubts. And it's important for us to appreciate it, because the Bhagavad Gita is available, is most available to those who are questioning. So one who is complacent, or one who is approaching Bhagavad Gita for some other reason, to embellish their knowledge, or maybe to get a different perspective, they may get something. But really the person who is genuinely inquiring, and the basis of inquiry is doubts, the person who has doubts. So the first chapter actually showcases the doubts that Arjun has. And no surprise, they are also doubts that we can relate to. So the point that I was making to Pat Prabhu earlier on is that Arjun came down to our level to have the Bhagavad Gita spoken. So the doubts that he has are the doubts that we have. And that's why the conversation becomes relevant to us. The sub-points in the chapter is Dhritarashtra's fears. Now, because all the participants have a certain level of understanding, so I'm not taking time to introduce you to the characters, that who is Arjun, who is Dhritarashtra, who is Duryodhan, who is Krishna, which is why I'll be able to move a little quicker. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. So the sub-points is Dhritarashtra's fears, Duryodhan's nature, and Krishna's desire. So this is how the first chapter is topically arranged. The predominant topic is the doubts of Arjun, and the supporting topics are these three. So in terms of the flow of the verses, so the chapter 1 is divided into 2 sections. The first section is setting of the scene, which is the first 27 verses. And the second section is Arjun's doubts, which is really the primary topic of the first chapter. The first section, which is the setting of the scene, is divided into 3 parts. The first part is the preparation for war. And here we see the only time Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan speak in the Bhagavad Gita. The opening verse of the Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Dhritarashtra. And he's asking Sanjay that what happened when these armies, they they congregated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, desiring to fight. What happened? And then we see after that Duryodhan speaking. And he goes, he tries to, he first tries to scare Bhishma and actually Dronacharya that the Pandavas are very strong. They have soldiers like Bhim and Arjuna who are capable of defeating hundreds and thousands of soldiers. And then he criticizes Dronacharya that the commander-in-chief of the Pandavas is Drishtadumna. And Drishtadumna is a student of Dronacharya. He says, your student, the one who has been trained by you, is now fighting against you. So he's using this political strategy to put Dronacharya on the defensive. That firstly, don't be careless, because there are powerful warriors over there. And secondly, that you have made mistakes in the past by training your enemies. Don't make mistakes again. And then he switches and starts glorifying his own army, because he does not want his own soldiers, his own generals to get so demoralized, saying that Duryodhan is saying that there is no way that we can fight against Bhim and Arjun. What's the point in fighting? So Duryodhan switches track and starts glorifying his own army, saying that, but I have powerful warriors on my side. I have warriors like Bhishma and Drona who are capable of vanquishing unlimited number of enemies. So he's paying this diplomatic intrigue that one point he's cautioning them, and at the same time he's encouraging them, saying that while they are powerful, we are more powerful. While we have made mistakes in the past, now we should not make mistakes. And that's the end of both Duryodhan and Dhritarashtra speaking. Then the middle part of the first chapter, 12 to 20, is the more implicit signs of victory of the Pandavas. So this is the blowing of the conch shells, of how it struck fear and despair in the hearts of the Kauravas, but it encouraged the Pandavas. And then we see Krishna appearing as the chariot driver of Arjuna. So the first appearance of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna ordering Krishna that take my chariot in the middle of the two armies so that I can inspect the armies. So this is the personality of Godhead. And how is he appearing? He's appearing as a lowly chariot driver, and he's being ordered around by his own devotee. So we see Krishna's mood as Bhaktavatsal. This is the mood with which Krishna is giving us the Bhagavad Gita, because of his intense love for us. That even though we have turned away from Krishna, Krishna is still pursuing us. He's constantly knocking on the door. We open it and close it and slam it on his face again, and then again comes and knocks on our door. So this is the mood of Krishna that permeates the existence of Bhagavad Gita. Section 2, which is and this is something that we should remember, the 5 reasons that Arjuna gives to not fight. And the reason that he gives is compassion. He says that, why should I fight if I have to kill so many people? So he is showing compassion on the lives of other people, both from his own army side and the other army side. Then enjoyment. He says that in this fight, everybody will die. Then who will I enjoy with? The real purpose of life is to enjoy with your friends and family. In this battle, my brothers like Duryodhan and Dushasan, my friends, both from my side and the opposing side, they will all die. So there'll be nobody left for me to enjoy with. Therefore, I should not fight. Third reason he says is fear of sinful reactions. And here he specifically talks about the killing of people like Dronacharya and Bhishma. He said Dronacharya is my guru and Bhishma is my grandfather. And Duryodhan is like my brother. And the sons of Duryodhan are like my sons. So he says, I will be killing those that I'm supposed to protect. I'm supposed to lay down my life to protect my guru. Bhishma, he has always been my protector. And now when I fight this battle, I will be shooting at Bhishma, trying to kill him. So can you imagine the sins that I will accrue by behaving in this way? Therefore, better not to fight. Fourth reason he gives is the destruction of family traditions. So Varna Sankar, he says that at the end of this battle, those who are protectors, those who are elders, the husbands, the fathers, the brothers, they would have died. So who will protect the family? What will happen to the women who are now left to be exploited? And when women are exploited, the destruction of the society is inevitable. So he says that now I'm not just talking about myself. The first three reasons was Arjun talking about himself, that I want to be compassionate. I want to enjoy. I don't want to incur sinful reactions. Now he's saying, now I'm talking about everybody else, that the whole society will face destruction because of this war. Better not to fight the war. And the fifth reason, which comes in the second chapter, but I'm still including it here because it's Arjun's composite set of reasons, is the root of the other reasons. That his indecision. Because if he was decisively sure about the first four reasons, then this conversation would never have happened. But the fact that he was not sure, the fact that he was indecisive, is why he is putting these reasons with question marks against them. Like Krishna, isn't this compassion? Isn't this lack of enjoyment? So the indecisiveness of Arjuna is considered to be the base reason. So we need to remember these 5 reasons. We don't have to remember the verses that it talks about, but there is a mnemonic that I've given, the CEFDI, compassion, enjoyment, fear of sinful reaction, destruction of family traditions, and indecision. So these are the 5 reasons. Important for us to remember, because in the subsequent chapters of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will address each of these reasons. So important for us to keep in mind what these reasons are. From a practical perspective, important for us to remember, because these are also the reasons that direct us to do something or not to do something. What is our enjoyment if we do this? Is this pious or sinful activities? Is this me being compassionate or me being cruel? How does this affect my family or the larger family, which is the society? Am I sure about this? So these are also reasons that on a daily basis are reflected in our own thought process, our decision making. So that's why important for us to memorize these 5 reasons. Now, in every chapter, there is at least one verse to memorize. So memorizing of the verse is very important for different reasons. One is that it's a little mystical, but it establishes a relationship between us and the chapter. And generally, the verse that is recommended for memorizing has something of an essence of the chapter. Also, it helps us in when we are discussing the Bhagavad Gita with other persons. So it makes what we say authoritative. So Prabhupada was very much in favor of devotees memorizing verses. And generally, if we are doing Bhakti Shastri, then we memorize a lot more verses. But at least for the purpose of this course, I would ask you to memorize one verse, at least one verse for some chapters, and some chapters that are a little bit more. So this is the first verse of the first chapter. And for obvious reason, it is important verse because Bhagavad Gita starts with this verse. And I'll recite it once. And it's a straightforward verse. Dhritarashtra Dharmashetra Kurukshetre Samveta Yutsava Mam Kapandavascheva Kim Kurvata Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra desiring to fight, what did they do? This verse is a summary of the Mahabharata. So it talks about the divisive nature of Dhritarashtra when he says, my sons and the sons of Pandu. Ultimately, they were all his sons. Pandu had died and Dhritarashtra had the position of being the head of the family. But we see his envious nature, my sons and the sons of Pandu. It also shows his irreligious nature. He says that Dharmashetri Kurukshetra, that they assembled at the place of pilgrimage. So he knew that the Pandavas had Krishna on their side and they were pious. So he's concerned that in this place of pilgrimage, they would be at an advantage and Duryodhana, who was irreligious, would be at a disadvantage. And then he says, desiring to fight, Kim Kurvata Sanjaya, which is a rhetorical question because they are there with their weapons, desiring to fight, so they will fight. But it talks about the inner mood of Dhritarashtra, that he was scared that the battle might not take place. That he was the person who was most committed to the battle happening. Duryodhana was simply an instrument to the ambitions of Dhritarashtra. But ultimately it was Dhritarashtra's willing that he wanted the battle to happen, which is why he is wanting to be assured by Sanjay that when they assembled desiring to fight, what did they do? I hope they're going to fight, right? So that's the implicit a question that is asking here. So please memorize the Sanskrit of the verse, translation as close as possible to the English. Doesn't have to be every preposition and every comma, but as long as it represents the verse. So things to memorize, 7 things to memorize. The subject matter of Bhagavad Gita, which is dharma, which is the intrinsic quality of every human being. The 5 topics. This is the story line that talks about the 5 topics, 3 divisions, karma, dharma, and gyan, 6 chapters each. Titles of the first 6 chapters. Summary of chapter 1. Summary of chapter 1, did I have that, or I'm wondering if I missed the slide. Yeah, this is I forgot to put I did have a sticky there, sorry. I put in a different place in the upper left-hand corner. So this is what the summary is. That it has two sections in it: setting of the scene and Arjun's doubts. Then the 5 reasons Arjun gives not to fight, and then memorizing the first chapter, first verse, and its translation. So I do realize I should have finished earlier. Next time I'll do better with time. Sorry about that. I'll stop here and see if there is any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I'm just wondering, like, how much effort that you are taking for all of us. That like to this level, keeping where to memorize, what to memorize, why to memorize, and and even the PPT preparation. One time that I prepared PPT, I was feeling like how to. I see devotees putting PPTs. It looks very hard for me. Like overall, this is. I don't know how to express my gratitude, but thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhu. One clarification question, Prabhu. This was from the first part of your class. You talked about speculation versus philosophy, and we understand this is very, very deep topics which require understanding to the core of it to get it right. So, Prabhu, how do we, and it's a very subtle line because it's not just a question for me, but when somebody is listening in and somebody is preaching, how does one know where is the speculation part and where is the real philosophy coming from the right source? How does as a listener we understand that?
So Prabhupada was a good example of that when whatever he spoke and whatever he wrote, he made sure that it was substantiated by references to the scriptures. It was substantiated by his Guru Maharaj and substantiated by others in the field. So this 3-way check of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and we can apply that to ourselves also. So it's our nature. It's in our nature to speculate. We sometimes speak more than what we know, or we may genuinely think we know, and we speak that. So it's a good way for us to put that check in, that when we are saying something, then does it comply with this? That when we say Bhagavad Gita says this, we should have an understanding in our mind that this is where Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. This is what Prabhupada explains. So that 3-way check is what distinguishes philosophy from speculation.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you. But Prabhuji, usually, like in India, there are a lot of Bhagavad Gita classes that goes on. As an audience, nobody will question, right? And people usually go on the eloquence of the speaker, and they all like it, and then they go with that flow. So, on a practical basis, Prabhuji, how does somebody preserve or safeguard themselves?
It's a good question, Prabhu. So one way is by educating ourselves enough to know. We may not know everything, but we may know enough to make that distinction when somebody is saying one thing or the other. Like in the scriptures, when we see there is these conversations that are happening, even though they're between exalted people, but the inquirer will begin by establishing his own credentials. Like, can you tell me about this process of creation? I understand this creation happens by the will of Krishna through Vishnu, and this happens. So the person establishes their own level of understanding. So it makes sure that the subsequent discussion is predicated of that level of understanding. So the reason the person is able to establish that understanding is the person has made some initial efforts to understand more about that topic. So by doing things like as we are doing, by trying to study Bhagavad Gita, the deep subject, definitely it's a lifelong study. But by studying it to this extent, we are able to establish enough checks and balances to know when a person is saying things that are actually, because a lot of people will say, just because they want to get credibility themselves, they'll say, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that you have to serve the poor, right? So other person having not read the Bhagavad Gita, but knowing that the Bhagavad Gita is an important book, now the statement takes a lot more credibility there. So then at least if we know, we can say that, can you tell me where in the Bhagavad Gita Krishna says that you have to serve the poor, or you have to do this. Second is a more practical understanding. Prabhupada would say that there are a few shops that sell gold and many shops that sell iron. And there are fewer customers for gold and many customers for iron. So this we'll have to accept the fact that there are more people who will be attracted to, as you were saying, the flowery eloquence of people who are able to spin many nice stories and sing and tell humorous tales. And that's the reality. It's the symptom of the age. We can try our best to educate them, but most importantly, we try our best to be in a position where we are protected ourselves, and we act as something that others can, if they need, can draw sustenance from.
Thank you very much, Bhayahari Prabhuji. Helps.
Okay. So if there are no more questions,
No. Prabhu, I have a question, Prabhu.
Sure.
So Prabhu, not a question, actually just comment. I wanted to say, like, I know that chapter 1 is the introduction chapter and such. But I wanted to say this chapter probably spoke to me the most in my personal space, because Arjuna, when he expressed all his anxieties, which is the second part of the first chapter, is like something that anybody and everybody can relate to, like all these doubts, all these questions, all these vacillations of the mind, like is this can happen, is this right, should this happen, what I'm doing is wrong. So all of these doubts, all of these questions, all of these anxieties, they kind of manifest in everybody's life. At least that's the way I think about it. So just wanted to say that is the reason it speaks to me a lot more, all this about, just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Pyalia. That's a very mature realization, and that's the reason Krishna has put it right up front, because it is so to speak a hook, that you read a book and you start the first chapter and you say that I think I get it, and then you're hooked, and then you're going to read the subsequent chapters. That let's see how are these issues that I am also facing are resolved, and then you're drawn into the subsequent chapters. Thank you for sharing your realization. Okay, so we'll stop over here, and I think do we have somebody for the Narsingadev prayer? I'm trying to figure out how to stop the Facebook thingy. 。 Somebody an expert in this? Somebody can virtually guide me.
I know how you stop sharing the, oh, that you've already done. Facebook Live, Prabhu, I don't know.